Week 6 is upon us. Thursday night football preview. We've got the Broncos, Chiefs. We've got another London game here, not involving the Jacksonville Jaguars. And how about Seattle Seahawks, Cincinnati Bengals? Game of the week, an important one early in the season. All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, it's Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson. Shout out to all the everydayers out there that are with us as we do this thing every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Okay, we're going to get into Broncos Chiefs Thursday nighter here in a bit at the end of the pod, but let's start in that early wee hours. Matt, you'll be happy to know, probably not, I don't know if you'll be happy to know, I was unhappy to live through waking up at 6:30 in the morning. I just kind of woke up last week, bright-eyed, 6:30, and was like, oh my God, okay. I just woke up. Usually I turn around and go back to bed or try to. I was like, oh, there's a football game on.
There's a game on. How about that?
Catch the London kickoff. And so that might be the first morning London kickoff game I caught live here on the West Coast. But the Jacksonville Jaguars, by the way, we'll get to, they're in our six-pack as well as we make our six-pack of six as we do six-pack of picks as we do every Thursday here on Peacock and Williamson. But it is not the Jaguars this week. It is the Ravens and Titans kicking off at 9:30 a.m. Eastern, at 6:30 a.m. Pacific time. Ravens, Titans in London. It is the visiting, quote unquote, Baltimore Ravens that are favored by 4 points against those Titans, man.
Yeah, I mean, all I can think about with this game is, since it's a standalone game, I paid a little more of attention. Just feels like Eddie George versus Ray Lewis. You know, like just a slugfest across this pond. Field conditions might not be great. Two head coaches that have been around the block that you trust. I expect a highly physical game. However, I wanted to call out, I don't give the Titans enough credit or enough airtime. Tajay Spears is a guy I am targeting in every one of my fantasy leagues. I'm trying to grab him right now. DeAndre Hopkins looks good. You know, maybe they get Burks back. You know, like I thought this might be one of the worst offenses in the league. And I don't feel that way. I'm starting to think that it's a lot better than I thought, and Vrabel's piecing this thing together, and Tannehill's a professional quarterback. The Ravens should have probably beat the Steelers. I mean, they had a crazy number of drops. Lamar played great. But I just see a slugfest here. And if this was under 3, I would take the Ravens. But I'm looking at 4. Is that what you have here too, the spread?
Yep, and we get all of our lines here from our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel has the Titans getting 4 points against those Ravens.
I like the points here. I think it's close.
I think I agree with everything you said there. I'm going to take the Ravens though and give up those 4 points, and for two reasons majorly. One is it's not an actual home field advantage for the Tennessee Titans in London, so you don't really get that bump in points. So it's not a true home dog situation, and it might actually hurt the Titans more than the Ravens, Matt, because, and this is something you bring up a lot actually. And the Tennessee Titans traveled late in the week.
Ooh, I didn't know that.
Versus what the Baltimore Ravens did. And I think there's a clear advantage for the team that gets out there early on these cross the pond trips. So for that reason, I'm going to take the Baltimore Ravens and a bounce back from last week. And I've really liked what I've seen from Lamar Jackson in this new Todd Monken offense in Baltimore. The rest of the team has to just catch the stinking football, and the Baltimore Ravens might be in a lot better shape than what their record looks like right now. So give me Baltimore in London.
Interesting. That's impressive. I didn't think about that because I remember Baltimore went over like on Monday. You know, like I think they went over like as early as any team ever has. And how about this? I just want to throw this out there because I want to forget it for next week. They requested, when they found out that they were going to cross the pond, the Ravens requested not to have a bye week next week. They're going to have a home game, but everyone always gets a bye week after going across the pond, and they're not because they didn't want it, which is kind of strange to me. I don't know if it's good or bad.
Interesting. I wonder why they didn't say why they didn't want it. They just requested to not have it.
Yeah, maybe they wanted it late in the year. I don't know.
It's too early. They realized it was week 6, and they said, "No, let's not do it." Maybe that was the way for them to sneak in and get a later bye week.
Maybe like, well, if you're going to send us over there, do us a solid and give us a week 10 bye week. I don't know.
Interesting. Okay, I like that. Moving on here. How about this one? I'm calling this one, Matt, the game of the week, and it is the Seattle Seahawks at the Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah. And the reason I'm calling it the game of the week is because, and I think similar to Titans Ravens, we're looking at a couple of teams that are very likely to be in the playoff hunt late in the season. More likely for the Seahawks just because of the hole that the Bengals dug themselves. But that switch might have flipped last week for the Cincinnati Bengals, and we might actually see now the Bengals team that, for the most part, we expected to see to start the season, even though Joe Burrow was injured with that calf. So the further he gets away from that injury, the better the Bengals have looked. And if they have flipped that switch, then we get a playoff preview. 2 playoff caliber teams. Now, they won't see each other in the playoffs unless it's in the Super Bowl, obviously, an NFC at an AFC team. The home Bengals favored by 2.5 here, which I think is a great line. It makes it tough for me to pick. But if this was last week, I think Seahawks might have been favored on the road.
Maybe by 2.5.
Yeah.
Right. So
which way do you go?
Good. I do think the Bengals flipped the switch. And by Bengals, I mean Burrow. Yeah, I mean, it's that simple with them. It's not like they figured some great thing out. I mean, I just think he really was comfortable for the first time. Like, oh, there's Joe. You know, I mean, like, I get it. I think that he is back. I believe that wholeheartedly, which then in my AFC Northdom makes them the team to beat in this division, and they could win the Super Bowl. I mean, I think, you know, my thoughts on them haven't changed from preseason Bengals, where they're a contender. They can hang with the Bills and Chiefs and those type of teams. However, I don't love this matchup for the Bengals in that, yes, it's a 1:00 start on the East Coast, but I just happened to read this morning. Pete Carroll's ridiculously good in that situation, and he's been doing this a long time. He's not a 3-year head coach against the spread. He's winning like 80% of his East Coast 1:00 games, and it's not the same as going overseas, but I bet there is something to it. You know, I mean, if you're a head coach, you have a pattern and it works, and I'm going to keep doing it. And Seattle's coming off a bye. I mean, they're going to be fresh as could be. I think Seattle might be the better team right now, and if you're going to give me points, I'm going to take it.
I would take Seattle if it was in Seattle. That's a great stat too, and it kind of destroys what I was thinking here, because I just think that the Bengals, if they flip that switch, they should be favored by a field goal at home, and you know it's 2.5. So I do have Bengals by a field goal here in what should be a good game. So I'm going to give up the points for the home Cincinnati Bengals here, 2.5. But the Seahawks are playing well. They're 3-1. They're coming off a bye. They're fresh. I think the post bye week thing can go either way though too.
True.
You know, a well-coached team, they should be ready for this one and fresh, but teams a lot of times don't even play that great after their bye. So I think sometimes it's a little overrated. And I don't know if there's any, big injuries that's going to change a lot for them. Probably should get,
I think their tackles are back finally, which is
that's huge. Right?
Yeah.
And then, we might see Adams for a full game.
I think he's playing, right? Yeah.
You might see him for a full game in a Seattle Seahawks uniform, which I feel like it's been 10 years since we've seen.
I kind of forgot he's on the planet,
Yeah, exactly. And he comes back and got concussed in his first game back a couple of weeks ago. So now he's had an extra bit of time to pass that concussion protocol. But the Bengals, this is so big for them. I just think it means more to Cincinnati. They're playing better.
Probably.
They can't go 2-4, but if they win this game, now you're 500. Now you're 3-3. Plenty of time to get back and even in this division winning conversation and be back the team that you thought they should have been coming into the year.
Yeah, and I don't feel strong about this prediction. I just took points because I think they're basically equal teams right now, and I'm not super afraid of the home field advantage for Cincinnati. But I think you're right that this is going to be one of the best games of Week 6.
Yeah, it's a tough one to pick. That's why it is our game of the week here. Seattle Seahawks at Cincinnati Bengals should absolutely be a fun one. Okay, we got more in our Week 6 pack of picks, and of course, we'll make picks for the Denver Broncos at Cincinnati Chiefs, and maybe
Cincinnati Chiefs.
I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm reading and looking and thinking about too many things.
I know, yeah.
There might be a little bit of a path that we're seeing the Denver Broncos on as we approach the October trade deadline as well. Next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's daily fantasy made easy. You're going to love testing your skills every single football week on PrizePicks this season. It's the most exciting and fun and easy way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. We're talking about winning 25 times your money this football season. And it couldn't be simpler. All you do, you select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and you place their entry. And an extra bonus now with PrizePicks, the PrizePicks reboot policy. Your entries stay in play even if one of your players that you picked gets injured. For NFL games and college football top 25 matchups, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with injury insurance. And all you got to do is go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl or download the app and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Okay, getting into the rest of our week 6-pack of picks here, Matt. And the Panthers Dolphins was actually earlier on our list. I'm going to put them at the end because they kind of tie into what's going on with the Denver Broncos here. So I'm going to put those two games at the end here, the Thursday nighter and the Panthers at Dolphins. How about Vikings at Bears? The Minnesota Vikings on the road at the Chicago Bears are favored by 3 points. Matt, am I crazy? Am I crazy for going back to my preseason love for the Chicago?
Oh, you can't quit them.
What I'm seeing from the last couple of weeks, especially their first win last week, and thinking it's crazy right now against the 1-4 Vikings to have the Bears as home dogs. Give me those 3 points for the home dog Bears.
I understand it, and I am on board with the arrow is firmly pointing up on the offense, Fields, etc. I think that they're trending the right direction, and I'm buying into that. I think the Bears defense is horrible. If it wasn't for Denver, they might be the worst defense in the league. But this Jefferson injury, I think, is going to really derail the Viking season. But can Cousins still Hawkinson and Addison and Osborne it up enough to still rip this defense apart? I tend to think so. And while I think the Bears are trending the right direction offensively, and they are at home, I bet Flores does something that screws up Fields. Like there's some kind of big play on defense. So I'm going to lay the points, but boy, I wish this was 2.5.
The thing is, the Vikings defense isn't much better.
It's not good, but it's just diverse.
Yeah. And so this is a start everybody you can on both offenses.
Yeah.
This is another really good team at a good time for the Bears to be facing and to get some more of that momentum going on the offensive side of the ball for Justin Fields. So, DJ Moore, we saw the breakout there. So that's why I like the Bears in this one, because I think it's going to be a shootout. And if I'm getting some points, then give me that field goal. Give me the Bears. This one should be a lot of fun, though, and could go any direction because I don't think either one of these teams is particularly good, obviously. But
no,
the Vikings are in a pretty bad place, and the Bears are in the best place they've been in a couple seasons, I think, right now, coming off a win with the output we've seen from Fields for 2 weeks and DJ Moore last week.
And I know we're going to talk Carolina and Denver and trade deadline. I wonder if Minnesota, especially if they lose this one, starts to think that way as well. Maybe move a veteran or two, accumulate picks.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I don't talk over unders all that much, but 43.5, as you were talking through that, seems a little low for this game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The defenses are bad. The offense, we've seen that, there's no Jefferson. So maybe there could be a big drop in that Minnesota Vikings offense.
Yeah. But
which is a possibility. But yeah, I feel like I would want to go to the over on 44.5 for sure.
Yeah, me too. I like that better than betting the game.
How about the Jacksonville Jaguars that are 3-2 hosting the 3-2 Colts? I mean, we talked about the Titans a little bit earlier. This is a division matchup, and there's a lot of above 500 teams in that division all of a sudden, Matt. And this one's going to be really important for seeding as we go later in the season, even though it's only week 6 right now.
So, do we think Jacksonville's kind of shaked off the rust and turned a corner with 2 wins over the pond, across the pond, or is that letdown central after such a strange 2-week period of your season? Then you come home and have to play a very physical, good running team that knows you well in Indy. I do think Jacksonville's front 7 is big, powerful, stops the run, whether it's Taylor or Moss. We know it's not going to be Richardson, but I think Minshew does a nice job hooking up with Pittman, guys like that. And I kind of like where the Colts are at right now. I'm leaning towards taking the points here in a divisional game.
The Jaguars right now at FanDuel favored by 4.5 points at home. I think going to London, then coming back and then getting a home game is huge. I think that's you get to go off with the boys and you figured things out, and now you are one cohesive unit. And like you said, the biggest strength of the Colts is one of the big strengths of the Jaguars. They've been really good against the run on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm going to actually give up the points here and take the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think this is where we'll see some separation, and the Jaguars say we're just a better team than this team in our division. And Trevor Lawrence, even though, the stats might not tell the whole story, he's played pretty well this year. And I think they're going to go on a run right here, are the Jaguars. So I'm a big fan of the Jaguars at this point in the season. Give me Jacksonville by more than 4.5.
I wanted to double check this because I know there's a trend that one of these teams doesn't beat the other very well. And it's not as bad as I thought. I mean, I was thinking that the Colts were like the Jags kryptonite, but it's not as bad as I thought. So I just wanted to double check that.
And new coaching staff, and I do like where this is going with Shane Steichen. I think they got the right guy. I don't think Minshew hurts, and in some ways might help, but I don't think it helps a lot either. Going from Anthony Richardson, as far as wins and losses right now, they're very different quarterbacks to play against, but I don't think it really makes a huge difference, good or bad necessarily, and probably helps you win even a little bit more. Just have the veteran quarterback in there this week in Gardner Minshew, but you're not afraid of playing against Gardner Minshew either. So, yeah.
True.
Zach Moss, is he a real thing?
Like, if you're the Ravens, wouldn't you trade for Zach Moss right now? Like, I think he's a good player. I liked him out of school. I never understood why he never quite got a chance. He runs hard. He's a good receiver. But we know Taylor's going to take that over any minute now, right? They just gave him $13 million a year.
Right. Even though last year was still the Moss show for those fantasy owners, they're like, all right, Taylor's back. Let's put him in there. And they're like, oh, no.
Yeah, the Taylor owners are like, okay, I'll sit through this 4 weeks and hope he plays. Oh, they signed him. Yay. Start him.
What's strange is the Colts played hardball this whole time. And then the reason you play hardball is because, well, look, the replacement level at running back's really high. So that's why you don't pay a running back, because we got this other guy, Zach Moss, who, was basically free for us. And he's playing a lot like Jonathan Taylor did behind a good offensive line. And then they're like, oh, but then we'll just pay him anyway now. That was just so weird.
We didn't talk about that. I thought the same thing. I'm like, you're playing hardball, and then you crack and give him exactly what he wants, and you didn't get him for the first month of the season.
After you kind of proved yourself right, why you don't pay running back.
Right. Like, did you really win this? I mean, okay. I do notice though. I mean, this is an off-season thing, but I think running backs are getting paid a little better this offseason or this season. Jacobs, Barkley. Some of it's funny money, but
yeah, the difference makers especially.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But somebody should call them about Moss. The Ravens are.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially if you start to see that tip, which this could be the week where Taylor takes back over. And yeah. Although the Colts are in it too. Like, the Colts aren't one of these things that they're above 500, So the more the Colts win, especially if they beat the Jaguars this week, that makes your chances of making the playoffs exponentially better. And so I think you're trying to add instead of subtract at that point.
Maybe. Although, Richardson's going to take over when he comes back. That's true. Bit of a wrench. But if you beat the Jags, you could win the division.
That's a good point. How about this one? The Washington Commanders at the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah. The Falcons at home favored by 2.5. We've started to see a little bit better Ritter. And the sort of the body language of the organization trading for Van Jefferson makes me think that they're like, okay, we got this. And they're a 3-2 team. They're going for this division. Like, obviously Van Jefferson, adding him as a trade deadline piece isn't earth shattering, but this is not a team that thinks they're not good. The Falcons believe they're good in the building. Are they good, Matt? And who the heck are the Commanders? Because I just think they're just a different team every week. And I feel like the vibe is much lower in Washington than in Atlanta right now, even though it's a 2-3 at a 3-2 team. So for that reason, I'm going to give up the 2.5 at home and take the Falcons.
So I really want to note this, that Houston is an interesting team. That's who played Atlanta last week. I mean, they game plan some stuff up that is out there and works for the most part. And why I say that is, as much as any time I can remember in the last year or two, they sold out to stop the Falcons' run game, and said, Ritter, beat us. And he did. I mean, he played his best game ever as a pro. They actually got Kyle Pitts some stats, believe it or not. And I just don't know, if I'm Washington, do I say, can Ritter do that again? Was that a one-off? Do I want to just take away the run game so Bijan and Algier just don't run all over me? Or am I going to trust my front four to win in the trenches? Even though Atlanta doesn't rush the passer well, I think Washington's one of those teams that's going to give up 6 sacks a game. So, on how and the way that they play. So I think I'm going to take Atlanta here, but I'm taking the Falcons.
And please, Sam Howell, just for my fantasy team, can you throw the ball more to Terry McLaurin, especially if you're going to throw the ball 40 times? Can you give him maybe 8 targets, please?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up too, because I think that's Bieniemy. I think that is a tight end centric offense, and then spread the ball around to everybody else, like the Chiefs did.
Well, here's the tie-in. We're going to talk a little trade deadline next, and a couple of teams that might be in fire sale mode. If the Commanders' season goes a certain direction, what about Terry McLaurin as maybe the biggest piece on the trade market?
Well, I think Chase Young could go Monday.
Interesting. Okay. The Commanders could be a fun team,
and he's
too,
playing well. Yeah.
With some big names. Right. Yeah.
Right.
And,
if they lose this one, sign him up.
Oh, I like it. The trade deadline is so much better than it used to be in the NFL. It probably won't be as big as we think, but I think there's going to be more names potentially available this year than ever.
I agree. I mean, we haven't talked about Carolina, but could they call Washington about a receiver?
There we go. Let's make that deal right now.
Yeah. Boom, make it happen.
Panthers at Dolphins and the Thursday nighter Broncos at Chiefs, a couple of the biggest lines of the week next. So today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Jace Medical and the Jace Case. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jace Medical offers the Jace Case. The Jace Case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you peace of mind so that you are not just hoping you have access to medication in an emergency situation. We've been through pandemics. Maybe you are with your family in an area traveling, maybe on vacation, and you don't have phone service. So Jace Medical makes sure you have the medication in hand that you and your family might need for whatever your personal needs are. Jace Medical is simple. They handle everything from online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. So don't get caught unprepared, and our listeners can get $20 off the Jace Case on these life-saving antibiotics today from Jace Medical by using our code LOCKEDON at checkout on jacemedical.com. That's code LOCKEDON at jacemedical.com. That's Jace, Jase, medical.com. So very interesting development happened this week, and it was a little under the radar because so much happens in the NFL. And this was Frank Reich, the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. By the way, Panthers at Dolphins, Dolphins at home, big favorites as they should be, 13.5. We'll talk about that line in a second. But where the Panthers are right now, have not won a game. They're trying to develop a rookie quarterback. And David Tepper, the owner of the Carolina Panthers, not known as the most patient. Yeah. He's not a patient man, right? Right. And they did big things this offseason. They moved a lot to go get their quarterback of the future. And Frank Reich dropped a nugget this week that he's had a lot of conversations with Tepper. Tepper's an active owner, and not fun is the way that Frank Reich put these conversations. And then he went back. It wasn't backtracking necessarily, and he's like, they were good conversations, but like this is an owner that's sticking his nose in, and which he has every right to do, and is not happy about having a winless football team right now, and probably wants to see CJ Stroud level play out of his young quarterback instead of what he's seeing right now, which isn't a disastrous for Bryce Young, obviously. But David Tepper probably hoped this team would be better right now than a team that does not have a win. And doesn't have their first round pick to cash in on if they go winless throughout the rest of the season. So again, I picked the Falcons over the Commanders strictly on vibes. And when you look at the Panthers right now, it feels like vibes can't possibly be high.
No. So you mentioned the draft. I happened to see this morning. If the draft happened today, the Bears would have the first and second pick. How cool is that?
That'd be fun.
That'd be fun. And maybe even you keep Fields. Maybe you don't. Who knows? Whatever. As for Tepper, I don't know that any owner's been in the news more since he took over the team. And I know I'm an old school, the Rooneys and, the Maras, but running a hedge fund like Bobby Axelrod from Billions is a lot different than an NFL curmudgeon, old school family run mom and pop joint. And I don't know if he's a good owner or not, but I just know that we hear his name more than we hear most owners' names besides Jerry Jones. And if I were him, I would be upset that the O-line and defense aren't at least average. And I know there's been some defensive injuries, but I thought that part of the nest for Bryce Young would be okay. And nothing's okay for this team. I think they lose by 30.
So you're giving up the 13.5. There's a 2-touchdowner for the greatest show on surf is what they're calling it right now in Miami with all that speed. Even though Achane's out, they still got Waddle back last week, and you got Raheem Mostert running 4.3 at running back still. What do you think? Greatest show on surf?
I'd go back to the nickname factory and try again.
I mean, I'm with you. I don't know how you could pick the Dolphins or the Panthers to be competitive on the road.
Yeah.
It's one of those where you can't really make the line big enough because it would be.
I don't know what they could be.
So, 2 touchdowns for the Dolphins. Kind of got to go there.
Yeah. I mean, they're just doing it to everybody.
Now, here's the question. Do we see a fire sale from those Carolina Panthers? Because on one hand, David Tepper's not happy about not winning, but you have to be realistic. Does that turn into Brian Burns, J.C. Horn, Jeremy Chin, you name it, being available, especially if some of these players and some of these units have been a little bit disappointing for the Carolina Panthers this year and try to recoup some picks that you lost in the trade up last year?
Burns and Chin are the ones I could understand. Horn's been hurt. He probably wouldn't get as much back. Is he? I don't know that his stock went up, even though he's a good player. I like Chin. I like Burns. I think you could get good stuff for them. I'm sure there's a lot of fan bases out there going, I'll give you my first round pick for Brian Burns and something else, So I would consider it. But then you're also just adding needs. I mean, they have so many needs already, and they don't have a first round pick.
And by the way, Horn's hurt again right now.
I know, right?
So, yeah.
I was going to say Shaq Thompson too, but he's hurt.
Yeah, so a lot of things not going good for the Carolina Panthers right now. I think they have to field offers, but at this point, if you trade Burns, then I don't know what the hell you're doing the last year, turning down last year's trade for Burns that probably aren't going to be as good as this year's because of contract stuff and and just as far as the play of that unit. And then you're talking about how they need a wide receiver one. Okay, go trade Terry McLaurin, but you just because the Bears asked for Burns. But you traded DJ Moore instead of Burns. And if trade Burns now, DJ Moore would be really nice to have on your football. So what are you doing is my big question.
Yeah, what's the big plan here? Yeah. Which to me kind of lends itself to new ownership. Like running a hedge fund is different than running the Carolina Panthers.
Mm-hmm. And you can't change your vision every 6 months.
No, stay the course. Keep paddling,
A team that might be even more in fire sale mode, Matt, is the Denver Broncos, who are at the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, the Chiefs favored by a lot on Thursday night, 10.5 points. Is this another one that's too easy that you're like, how the heck could you not give up all those points just because the Broncos have been just non-competitive in a lot of these games?
Yeah, for the most part, yes, I think that's true. I don't think the Chiefs are the Chiefs at the moment, though. You know, I mean, especially offensively, they're really searching. I fear, I'm not saying it's happening, but I fear that Kelsey is declining slightly, that this is the first step back ever in his career, and they'd have a hard time overcoming that. Much like the Patriots, no one's crying for Kansas City at the moment. I'm sure they'll be just fine, unlike, the Patriots. But I could never bet on Denver. I mean, if Denver was playing Carolina right now, I would take Carolina. Like, Denver's the team I would pick last in terms of putting my money on whatever the Vegas spread is. I just don't trust them at all. And I very much think this short week will happen. They'll get embarrassed tonight. We'll be talking about Taylor Swift, and the Mahomes backup will be in the fourth quarter. And then they're going to field offers for Judy, Sutton, Bowles, Simmons, maybe even Surtain. I mean, they can't get rid of Wilson. Who do you want? Come and get him.
Frank Clark?
Yeah.
Yeah. Judy can't stick around, I feel like.
They almost need to get Mims in there anyway. So Judy or Sutton needs to go.
Right. Simmons can be a piece that could make a difference for a team on the back end. Bowles has been disappointing, but every team needs a tackle, feels like, right? Lyle Collins is like everywhere right now as a free agent. He's cut by the Bengals, right? And so he's healthy and taking visits. So I think he'll find a home in October as well. The Panthers aren't intake mode, but they're bad enough to earn that first pick for the Bears, who own it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Broncos, it feels like they're like, let's go after it. I think of like legit tank vibes for the Broncos right now, and Sean Payton that wants to get his own guys in, get as many picks as possible, the highest picks possible. Russell Wilson, once it's feasible financially, will be out the door, and I'll implement my guys with my system.
I think that's just Peyton's personality too. I mean, I think he's very high on himself. You could say it's confidence, cockiness, earned or not, whatever. I'm the czar here. I don't want to inherit anything, get all the old stuff out. I'm going to bring all the new stuff in. And I think as it sits right now, the draft goes Bears, Broncos. So they're not far off.
And in the end, it might be Broncos, Bears.
Yeah, Bears are going to win another game.
Yeah, I got to win this week. We'll see.
Right.
We'll see how it ends up going. But it's hard to imagine right now that the Broncos and Bears don't draft in the first three because of that Carolina pick.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're both guaranteed at least a top 5 pick. I mean, that's like easy as could be. I mean, like Arizona might not win again. I mean, there's a couple teams that could fall apart, but I don't know if Denver wins again, to be honest.
Yeah, especially after a fire sale. And then, and at that point too, Surtain won't be happy. He'll ask to be traded. He won't want to sign a new deal. So then you trade him to the Steelers. There you go.
Right, obviously.
Fantastic. Kansas City by $1 million.
By $1 million, yeah. Unless garbage time worries me, because I think Mahomes has a baseball hat on for the fourth quarter.
And I think the line is not quite as big as it could be, because Thursday night can always be a little weird, but it is in Kansas City. So they got to win by 2 scores at least.
Yeah, I mean, awful place to walk into too if you're Denver.
Mm-hmm. That is our picks, our weekly 6-pack. We'll make the picks for the rest of the week 6 schedule on tomorrow's episode. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Make sure you guys are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Matt and I back tomorrow. Peacock and Williamson.